Welcome to Virtually a Book Club. I'm Jessie Henninger.
I'm Peggy Sue.
And
for the first time ever in Virtually a Book Club history, our long, lengthy history, we accidentally read the same book.
That's right. And not just one book, all three books. We are talking about
a full trilogy.
We're talking about the Scholomance, which I hope I said right. I have trouble with that word.
Series. Oh, I say Scholomance, and I have no idea which one is correct.
It's like scholastic.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, I don't know. When we read one of these in book club, like maybe even 2 years ago, the first one, and the way that I said it made everybody make fun of me, and now I have a hard time saying it at all. So that is.
Which way is Scholomance? How you said it before?
I don't remember.
I don't know. So we're just each going to say whatever comes to the top of our mind at the time. Yeah. If you have a correct pronunciation, that's crazy because this is an imaginary story. But that's fine.
Mm-hmm. I mean, surely somebody knows. Like, it's words.
I'm sure there's a real pronunciation for this, and I have no idea what it is. I am pretty flexible on, like, fantasy pronunciations of things, but sometimes I get stuck in really specific things. But English is wild, so who knows?
It's true. One of my favorite things in our book club is when we get together and we start talking, and somebody will be like, "Oh yeah, like Julian," and then somebody who's like had the audiobook will be like, "What? That's not how it's pronounced." Yeah, like I have a really specific example in my head, and for some reason I'm blanking on it. Was it? Yes, it was Jean. The character's name was Jean, and I pronounced it Jean the entire time in my head. And then the audiobook listeners were like, "No, it's Jean," and I'm like, "That doesn't make sense." Until finally somebody was like Jean-Luc Picard, and I was like, "Now it makes sense. I get it now." But no,
yeah, my husband and I are always like that. And right now, this is a wild, random side story, but right now we are reading the Murderbot Diaries out loud to each other.
Ooh,
which is fun. It's like a short series of novellas. And so like every night we pop open and we take turns reading it. But there are constantly times where I run across a name and then he's like, "Let me look at that text to see which character this is."
And I do a thing too, like when I'm reading to myself, if I don't know how to pronounce a word, I just sort of zoop over it. Like it doesn't even matter.
That's Chris.
But then it does matter if you're reading it out loud or talking about it, or
he's like, "I am confident you are pronouncing it correctly, but I just don't know what that is."
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Who is that? Oh, okay, now I can see it in my head.
Got it.
Yeah, I have a friend who, when that happens, when she sees a word she doesn't know, she makes a picture in her head, and she always sees the picture when she's reading. I think that's super interesting. Like,
that's my brain does not do that. Synesthesia kind of concept. Mm-hmm. That's cool. Mm-hmm. I love how brains work.
Yeah, me too.
This is clearly a neurotypical show. The books that we read, the trilogy, beginning with A Deadly Education,
yes,
but moving into The Last Graduate and The Golden Enclave. So that's 3 books to cover today. If we don't quite get it today, we may do some editing on that, but all by the wonderful Naomi Novik. And you've read a little Naomi Novik before, is that correct?
Yes, and so have you, but not the same thing. So I read Spinning Silver, which one of the crazy things about her as an author is just how all of her books feel completely different. Like, I cannot express to you how Spinning Silver, if you gave it to me and I didn't know who had written it, there is not 1,000 guesses that would have gotten me to Naomi Novik, because that book feels very much like an old fairy tale. It feels very, like, Slavic. It even has that, like, where like, that almost, like, omniscient third, like, a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, so super, like, to me, that's just absolutely fascinating that she can do that.
It is, yeah, writing magic, and I super agree. I didn't read another book by her for a really long time because I had heard that, basically, and none of the other, like, blurbs were giving me the same vibe that these books did.
And
I was like,
for sure.
Deadly Education was my jam. I still recommend it to, like, everybody who's, like, anybody looking for a book, not looking for a book, stranger on the street, you should read this book.
Me too.
I was super, super into it, super, super into the voice. And then I did end up reading His Majesty's Dragon. And we talked about that a little bit in our Dragons episode, which is fun. And I hear that it gets even more cool and interesting as you go on. So that book is from the perspective of, like, a British officer historical fiction, but with dragons, historical fantasy.
Yeah.
And it's very much in that like British military historical man point of view, which is cool. But I hear that it even delves into the dragon's point of view later in the series, and that book is supposed to be really, really good and really interesting. And I think that's really cool because the dragon is a super intelligent, like spoiler alert, very beyond human intelligence kind of entity. Yeah. And I think that that's really awesome. So I'm interested in that. I know this is probably going to like tear apart your historical fantasy loving heart. Not typically a historical person. No. So historical is not usually my vibe. I don't usually pick that up by choice, which is part of why I hadn't picked up any of her other books. But this one, again, starting with A Deadly Education, which I think we can agree on how to pronounce that.
Yes.
Is very modern. So we're looking at a modern teenager. Yep. And it's not a specified year. It could be a little bit vague. Throughout the series, there is mention that like, the internet exists.
Right. They have cell phones.
You can access the internet on cell phones. Yeah. So like, it's doable. That could be 10 years ago. It could be 10 years in the future. It's hard to know. Right. It doesn't have to be a specific year, but it is a modern book, which is kind of my jam. And just the point of view of this is from the angriest teenage girl you've ever met.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I'll say it's like so interesting to me, like, and of course we're both writers, but how pieces of a book come together, because I really think if she had done this book series from from a more traditional, I would say, hero's point of view, I just think the book would have fallen so flat. And because of like what's happening in these books, and so if you want a little background, all of the kids that have magic ability, not all of them actually, a lot of the kids that have magic ability get taken into this high school. They are stuck there for 4 full years. They never leave. They don't get to come home. It's like in, a magical void, so there isn't any outside. You're literally in this giant building for 4 years fighting for your life. And there's a lot, and not like, it's not because they need you to fight, it's just because the monsters
survive.
Right, monsters like to eat magic children, which is why they go to the school. The school is supposedly safer, but the monsters still get into the school. Like, everyone knows that people will die.
But it is safer. That's a stat up at the beginning.
She makes it pretty clear. And she has to keep reiterating it through all the books because there is part of you that's like, this is insane. Why would you send your kid? And it's just because of like...
Because it is better. Yeah. It's, she talks about like your odds of surviving on the outside are infinitely worse. Mm-hmm. There's this other book, it's Blood Like Magic, and I think that's LaSalle Sandberry. It's on my shelf over here, but I can't quite read the author's name from here. Side note, she has a character who talks about, it's a Black family that lives in, I think, Toronto, and it is kind of a futuristic fantasy if you're into that. There's more tech, and there's more interesting things going on there, and it is on the outside, not in a void school. Yeah. But she talks about one of her like predecessors in this place had moved to Toronto from the southern United States to escape slavery.
Oh, sure.
And so, but like obviously they're still dealing with the repercussions of like racism and you know, in general how prejudices work. And so she talks about like getting to Ontario is like the dream, right? Because you're in Canada, you're not in this slave holding country anymore. Right. And she's like, very specifically says, it was better, but it was not good.
Right. Right. Like, yes. And that, I mean, and I guess that is how the Scholomance is.
Yeah, like it's worth it. It's better.
Right.
But it is not good.
No.
And I love that phrase. I think of it all the time because that's so applicable to life.
So you're in the school. It's really hard. There are no adults in the school at all. The school teaches
That's fascinating to me.
So it's like, there's a lot of like these social dynamics and things that have cropped up over centuries basically, and how everything works, and rich kids and poor kids, and like what your like currency is mana, which is basically the ability to do magic, right? Yeah. And limiting it and all that kind of thing. So
which is good.
Right.
I like that they have that. And I also like if you're gonna open up a magical high school,
I feel like in this situation, in this typical book, your hero would be one of two people. It would be a girl who gets put into the magic school who doesn't know about magic but has it, and suddenly she has to stay alive in this magic school with no skills. That's your typical, right, MC. Or the boy who has this insane ability to kill monsters
that no one else has.
Right. Like, he's like, more people are alive in the school now than ever because he is also there. And that is not the main character of this book.
To be fair, both of those characters exist in this book.
Yeah. But they are not
but
the
neither
main
of them are the main character, which is, yes, a very fun choice. And I'll also say, as I'm adding, like, this is an adult book, this is not necessarily a YA book, I did let my 12-year-old read this first book.
Oh, I'd let my kids read it for sure.
It has a lot of language. And I will throw out, I told my sister, maybe don't let your 9-year-old read this book. Because it does have a lot of kids dying.
Yeah. But I mean, so does Hunger Games, right? Like, this is not, this is
just not that, you know, it's
and
a little
they
brutal.
feel like teenagers. They do not feel like adults who are pretending to be teenagers, which I feel like does happen in the genre sometimes. They feel like teenagers. But I just, like, the main character is basically the character who should be the villain. And, like, and then the whole series sort of revolves around this, like, is
that
she
choice to not. And I'll also say, as an adult book, there's not like a lot of adult content.
No.
That we're not again, it's not a romantasy. There's not a sex scene, which is why I let my kid read the first one. I'll say it does get a little more adult in that context later in the series. So just as a warning, I let my kid read the first one before I read the second one because I was like, this book is so fun. It's making me laugh out loud, and I want to laugh out loud with you. And we talked about it a lot. And then I read the second one and I was like, we're going to wait on that.
Right. But it's also not, it's not like, I don't feel
like it's not erotica. It doesn't go.
Yeah, it's not scintillating in
It's just a little more adult than I was ready to talk about my 12-year-old with.
Super fair.
I'll say,
I would let my high schoolers read it.
Yeah, I would let a high schooler read it. My kid particularly is a little shy about romance stuff. And since then we have read that book out loud together. And I sort of skimmed over some of those scenes.
Right, and they're kissing.
Where he like pulls his blanket over his face and turns around. If he ever sees this, he'll be really embarrassed that I told people that. But he hates romance scenes in anything, in movies or whatever. So he'll just skim past that. But it's not like scandalous. If I had a kid who was not scandalized by that stuff, I would definitely be like, yeah, go for it.
No, I mean, I think what makes it more is would be like the violence more than anything else. And even the violence is done because of the point of view. Even that has, everything in this book has this really wry sort of sense of humor attached to it. So it's like, even though these terrible, tragic things are happening, there's also this sense of like, this really funny sense of humor. And I feel like the other place I've experienced this was in The Fault in Our Stars, where the subject matter is so heavy and so sad, but her voice, she's the one telling the story, and her voice is so just funny and kind of ironic, like that it really softens I think it softens all of that and makes it so that you can actually enjoy the story instead of being like, this was torture for me. And I feel like I'm looking for a quote, and it doesn't look like I underlined it, but I knew I was going to be in love with these books when in like it's the first chapter, one of the early pages. You know how the main character in a lot of fantasy books is like, I'm so ugly, and yet for some reason all the boys like them, and you're like, okay, right? Oh, I'm so skinny, but I can, like, I don't know, kill a man with my bare hands. Like, this girl is like, I'm not ugly. She goes, in fact, like, I keep getting more gorgeous in an alarming way. Like, because she's supposed to be this dark sorceress. I was like,
we touched on a little bit. I think that's a fun.
I was like, I love this book. I am going to love this book. As soon as she was like, I'm gorgeous and I keep getting more gorgeous. But she isn't a snob at all.
The premise, again, this is all covered like real early. These aren't huge spoilers. Are that very early in Elle, our main character's life, she was told by her grandmother, who is, again, this is a magic world and magic is real, who is like, I don't know, is prophet the right word, but like a seer in the way that she sees the future, and predicts that Elle will, quote, bring death and destruction to all the enclaves of the world. And enclaves are the safe space where wizards who are well enough off to get into
Right.
them live to
Right.
escape
Right.
the monsters.
Right.
So that's like a pretty devastating
Yeah.
prediction to give to a
4-year-old
preschool aged child.
Yeah.
And her whole life has been shaped around that. And so
Yeah.
that gives her kind of that POV of like, she's a little over it.
Mhm.
She kind of doesn't care what other people think because everyone has thought she would be a monster her whole life.
Right.
And she is doing everything in her power to, I love this concept of like very nuanced of like, she wants to be a good person, right? Her mom takes her away from that. She's like, I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to take care of you. I'm still going to raise you to be a great person.
Right. And her mom is like, her mom is like super
angel.
saint.
She's a
like,
saint from heaven.
Yeah.
It is, that's not literal because this is a magic book,
Right.
but
Right.
she is the best person. But you really get the sense that she's not doing it to be nice the way her mom wants her to be nice. She is doing it to spite her grandmother. She's like, I'm
Right.
not going to succumb to this prophecy.
Right.
I am not going to be the monster that
Right.
you wanted me to be.
Right.
And I deeply love any teen girl doing anything out of an anger or spite
Yeah.
for an authority figure.
Yeah, for sure. And too, like, I mean, I think there is part of Elle that's like, I know that this is right, even if I don't feel it. And my husband is, I sometimes joke that I'm married to like a slightly more sarcastic Mr. Rogers. Like, he is so gentle and wonderful, and like he approaches, I can't even begin to describe it. I have a lot of like anger and passion inside me. I have a lot of passion inside me, right? And that's why we're a good match and everything. But my husband is like, as a person of faith, he is a pacifist. And in my brain, I feel like that is correct. He is true. But in my heart, I am not. Like,
this was a conversation about vengeance the other day.
You know, like, exactly. Like, I feel like, I don't, like, sometimes I'll be like, I feel so stabby. And like, so, and I feel like that's sort of how Elle is. It's like, she knows what is true and good and right. She just doesn't always feel it, but she is choosing the very hard, in her case, it wouldn't be as hard for other people, but it's hard for her to continue time after time to like walk that path. And it's not like she does it perfectly, which is also great, but like,
but she does have to be extremely much more careful than anybody else. There's definitely several times throughout the series, throughout the first book, but throughout the series in general, there are people who are like disbelieving in how hard she works to be good, to be and to be perfectly good. So as we mentioned before, mana is your magical power in this series. You have to build it through usually physically, but sometimes mentally demanding tasks. So crochet, that's why I'm wearing this today. Crochet is a very mentally demanding task for Elle. She hates it, and so she does it all the time because that's how it's an easy way for her to build power. But she also does physical exercises, push-ups, things that, you know, also torture you if you didn't just like love PE in high school.
And
which I think a lot of people can relate to.
She's doing everything alone because she's so isolated, because people always people just assume she is evil, right? So she's also very alone, which makes, so like, apparently, at least in her case, the more she hates it, the more mana she can build out of it. So
and I think that is it's super powering her in a way, but it also, like, other people, again, you hear this throughout the book and throughout the series, other people cheat. And it's very easy for them to cheat. It's easy for them to pull a little extra mana out of a bug or a physical item. There, she talks about there being holes in her bedposts because other people have pulled the mana out of other things. And she cannot start doing that. It is actually extremely easy for her to start doing that. If she
that girl
wants,
could have all the power she wanted if
physically yank the power out of a person, which is very bad. It's very naughty, and it makes you, how do you say the Maleficer?
Okay, I have to like see it in my head. Just give me a second. I think I say, like, I think that is how I say it, because it looks like Maleficent to me.
So we started, like Maleficer. And so that's how, like, my kid and I also have this question. If you pronounce it a different way, let us know. But yeah, avoid becoming a Maleficer, an evil magic user. She can't start cheating even with like a bug, because it will basically be a snowball effect for her, and she could bring death and destruction to all the enclaves of the world, which is the last thing that she wants. The first thing that she wants, according to the novel in the first line, is to kill Orion Lake.
Yeah, which is, he's the hero. He's like the golden boy that keeps saving people, and she's like,
I got the power to kill monsters in a way that no one else does.
This guy. He is so annoying, and she's hoping to like show her amazing magical powers to get a spot in an enclave once she graduates, if she makes it through graduation, which is like a whole
so she
thing.
can finally be safe.
Right, because if you live in these enclaves, they're like the school, they're built into the void, so the monsters can't get in, and so your kids are safe. So the people who live in the enclaves have like lived in them a long time, or they've won a spot somehow. It's really hard and space is limited. And so
it's generally like a haves and have-nots situation.
Right.
If you are in an enclave, you are at least, even if you're in the lower end of an enclave, you are fairly wealthy compared to a kid who can't get into an enclave.
Right.
And but then when you come to most seats,
right, and when you come to the school, the enclave kids are like, everybody is like, they have the most privilege. Everybody's sucking up to them because they're the people that might be able to get them a spot in after graduation, and they also have the like most mana and the best
with an
tools.
enclaver kid, you have a better chance of surviving. So that's one thing we haven't talked about, is like, there are no teachers because your school is to survive.
Yeah.
You get assignments assigned from the void, which is wild and fun.
I mean, I will say, I definitely feel like Sir Lord Badulalu, who invented the school in old-timey times.
Sir Alfred Browning something.
Yeah. The fact that you built a school for minors to attend with no adults is bonkers, man. We'll maybe talk about that later when we're all done. But they're all too busy trying to live than trying to do crazy extracurricular activities that you would assume high schoolers would do when left to their own devices. Yeah, I just. It's because I'm an adult. I'm an adult mom. I'm like,
that birth control magic, not safe, if you're wondering.
Yeah. Yeah,
especially if you're a teen.
I mean, but that was something interesting, right? That a lot of the kids came in with like IUDs, and like they kind of came in prepared. So there is that. So that there's still this modern.
And Elle came in armed with her glittering personality.
Yeah, it was gonna be fine. Nobody was gonna want to date her, so it was cool.
But I mean, honestly, if you got your kid the shot, if you got your kid anything that's going to lessen, sorry to like make this part weird, your period, can you imagine having your period at magic school?
But they did have a magic solution for that. It was like, oh, you brew up this tea and then it just like goes away.
Yeah.
So
thank God, because she's running low on underwear as it is.
Yeah.
Because you can't bring more in. There's a very limit.
Yeah, you can only bring like a duffel bag worth of stuff in for 4 years.
It's very specifically weighed. So that's very difficult. You can't bring in a lot of things. But again, a benefit of being one of these enclaver kids is that when you come in, you probably inherit some things from the kids in your same enclave.
Right, who have graduated.
Who have been passing things down for God knows how long. So you start off with all these bonuses that these poor kids don't, which again, very accurate to real life.
Yep. Yeah. So, okay. So my question for you is, how long would you survive in the Scholomance?
This is a great question, and I don't know. I will say I'm a very light sleeper, so I don't think I'm going to get tricked on that account.
At night, I feel like that's fair. If I had the ability to protect myself once I was awoken, then I would not get eaten at night either.
Ooh, yeah.
That is true. I sleep terrible.
I'll say somebody out there is going to be like, this isn't true, but I feel like it's fairly true. I was an athlete in high school. That's kind of undeniable. I was on the teams.
Yeah, I don't know why people would be arguing with you about that.
I don't know.
I mean, I
wasn't
believe you.
First string on the basketball team, but I was like pretty good at softball. That's kind of my personal imposter syndrome of like, was I an athlete? And it's like, you were pretty good.
You played in every sport and did extra ones.
I didn't run track. Because the track meeting was the same time as the softball meeting one time, and I used that as a sign to be like, I don't have to run. I don't like running. But yeah, I came in pretty athletic. I would have come in pretty healthy. I would have, had some physical prowess to deal with there. I will say I grew up poor, so I would not have come in as an enclaver for sure.
Nope, me either.
But I do think that there are some benefits there to like you know a little more about how to eat less, and you know a little bit more about how to get along with less and how to make a little bit less stretch a little longer. So I think that's positive. I'm pretty decent at making friends.
Oh,
I'm an extrovert.
I think you'd be good at the social part of it.
So yeah, and I think the social part of it is a lot of it is just the willingness to go up and be like, hey guys, what are we talking about? Or to just join a conversation is a thing that I do all the time in public that kind of embarrasses my husband. He's like, I don't know how you can talk to strangers, but I'm very willing to talk to a stranger and then like find a common ground there and like let's build from there. So from that, I would hope I could like join a group and feel like pretty solid. You know, would I be the best? Would I be an Orion Lake? No.
Right.
Would I want to be best friends with Orion Lake? Probably.
I mean, he is a pretty popular guy, much to his chagrin.
He doesn't want to be best friends with anyone, which is also a fun like turn on that trope. Is the like he could be the most popular kid in school and he could be a real jerk about it, but instead he is pretty oblivious to social norms. So I think I could make it. I think, you know, it's like getting on the right team, and I think I could get a spot on a team. I'm pretty smart. I don't know that I would make valedictorian in this school because it's so competitive.
It sounds like it's violently competitive. Like I was like,
especially
like,
Elle's year.
Yeah, I was like, oh,
Elle's valedictorian is a little extra violent, which is fun. And I'll say we start the book in Deadly Education. She's a junior, so the valedictorian character is not really big yet, but it does come up later in her senior year in the second book, The Last Graduate. But yeah, I think I'd like to think I could graduate. I would come out of it rough. I'll say I did also, this is dark, have an eating disorder in college. So I know that I can go on less food and still be pretty energetic.
Yeah. So I think that I would not last. I don't think I would last past the first month because all of the things that you have said you need to be able to do, it takes me too long to do them. So
but
like
maybe you'd be really great at building mana because you hate those things.
Maybe, I don't know. Like so I did sports, but I was not athletic. Like I was not like I did it because I was like I wanted to, not athletic at all, not fast. I have like a weird like I have like an adrenaline thing, so sometimes like if I'm not getting the right kind of foods and things, like I cannot function super well. And I love talking to people now, but as a young person, I was like pretty shy. And we did move a lot, so I did have experience going into new schools where you didn't know anybody and having to start from scratch. I always ended up with friends. But it took me a while. And I think it would take me too long. I don't think I would survive long enough. I think, and because and maybe your parents train you better before you go in, but I'm too, like I'm in my own world and I've always been that way. So like I'm going to eat oatmeal that has poison in it and die.
You're going to have your nose stuck in a book and walk face first into a monster.
Right. Like I'm going to get killed because I don't see it coming. And I'm not going to have the friends to have my back soon enough. Like I think
hopefully we would randomly like spawn into adjoining dorm rooms,
right? I mean,
and then I would be there every time you tried to walk into a monster to just yank your collar.
I mean, for real, in cross country practice, I was just jogging along, and one of my friends reached out her hand and grabbed like the back of my shirt and pulled me out of the road. Like a car was coming. Like, so I'm like, I don't think. And like what, when I was younger, a lot of times what would happen is that like an extrovert would adopt me. And I feel like that is what happens to lots of introverts and is wonderful. But I don't know that happens in the Scholomance. I don't see that happens there.
That is a good point because everybody, like the currency there is kind of favors for each other, right? Nobody does anything without the promise of a return favor. Right. Which is a rough society. I mean, it's a very individualist. It's a very,
Yeah, everyone's out for themselves.
Me first.
Even the people that have friends, they know that like this, if like somebody gets injured and then they can't be like, it's like, oh, you were on our team, our graduation team, and now you're injured and now you're a liability. It doesn't matter how much we like you. Which that is a horrible thing to put on a child. Like what a crazy
literal child.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there is definitely that concept of like, I think that, again, I would be bad at that. I would be kind of a pushover on doing favors for people. I don't think I'd go because
Although it might get you somewhere too, right? Like if you're doing a lot of favors for people.
I would always hope that it would, and then probably enclavers would be rude about it.
Yeah.
But that would be the kind of thing. If we met right off, then we're already you're already in my pocket. I'm like, let's go ahead and I'll drag you with me.
Right.
And be like, oh, can I come to the library later? Jessie will come.
Yeah, she
like,
will. She's just like,
we'll all be there. It'll be fine.
And what I do have going for me that Elle doesn't is that I do seem to have like a sort of like, aura or personality of like, I am not a threat. I am, like I might be awkward and quiet, but people don't seem to mind that too much about me. Like they'll, so yeah. So basically, if I met Peggy Sue, I might live. Otherwise, I die. I give myself a month at most, and then I cry too much, and like, the whole thing. It would be terrible.
I think as long as you devote all your crying to your room with your door closed, I think everybody's doing a lot of that.
That's probably true. Yeah. Oh my gosh, too bad crying doesn't make mana. If crying made mana, I would have so much.
I think it's mentioned in the second one that in the Scholomance you learn to cry with your eyes open so that you don't miss anything.
So you don't get eaten. Yeah.
So you don't get eaten, basically, is like that's a skill that you learn. So it's like everybody's kind of on edge, and it's definitely not just you.
Yeah.
I'll say if you were able to survive past the month, or at least for the first month, do you have like a specialty education track that you would do? Is there one that you would choose? Is there one that you think you'd be best at?
I know this is the other thing that I'm like, there's nothing for me to succeed at here because I'm not good at languages. Languages and math are like, there's just like a piece of my brain that just like can't get it. So like anything math is out. So I feel like that's like, all of the alchemy stuff is math, right? Like, I'm like, that's out. Languages are out. What's left?
Yeah, I would say the one that I think I absolutely would not do is the maintenance track. Maintenance track.
I know, I feel like that's the only thing.
You do all of the basic, like all the students are assigned tasks around the school because again, there are no adults. Right. There's no custodial staff.
Right, somebody's got to clean.
So all the students are tasked with clean this up, mend this, fix this item, things like that. As a regular part of their duties. If you're an enclaver, you usually pay off a kid to do that for you, and you don't have to do any of it because it's a little bit dangerous. And if you're a poor kid, you have to work your own shift. And if you work enough shifts, that can sometimes get you into that enclave party at the end that's going to help you escape. Because again, the graduation requirements from the school are not to pass classes. They are to survive a gauntlet of monsters.
You do have to pass classes, though. If you don't pass your classes, then the school starts, like...
attacking you.
Yeah. So you do have to pass. You don't have to pass well. So here's my thing. I would actually have been really good at the maintenance stuff, but I'm not good at surviving. So again, I'm eating with, like, I'm going to get
in with the right maintenance crew, maybe that would work.
Maybe.
Now, that one's not me. I'm not going to go down to the maintenance track with you.
So, okay.
I'm going to avoid doing extra work.
If I could, like, be, like, in the magic world, I think this is something I would be good at. So possibly spell making, creating your own spells. I might be good at that. I don't know. But I do think I would be good at design, which is not the same as like building the thing, but I think I would be good at design. I was like, why don't they have, in the real world, why don't they have magic wallpaper that has all the runes in it that can help, just another barrier to help keep their kids safe? Like that should be a marketable thing. Or like some of the girls.
Well, there is they have the doors all magicked up.
Right. So, but I feel like there's all these little things you could do.
Like, it may just be like an expensive thing to have. But
right, maybe. But like, Odd's family, how do you pronounce her name? I'm not good at the names.
I say Adia.
Okay, that's what I said too. So her family lives like in New Jersey, in a big house, like with a pool. So, like, they have, like, normal people coming into their house, so they can't have, like, magic stuff on display, but I feel like you could have magic wallpaper. I feel like you could have, I feel like you could have, like, and there are obviously clothes that people have done stuff to out in the real world.
So that's definitely, a design component.
Yeah, I feel like I would be good at that, but I feel like I feel like that's not any stuff that gets used in the school. Like, I feel like
school.
Yeah. So it's like all the things I feel like I would be good at, I wouldn't survive long enough to do. Which is probably, honestly, that is probably a problem in this world. They could probably be a much more successful world if more of the kids were graduating, because some of your skills are not helpful to a
Not
high
transferable.
school society, but are to society at large. And if you're
Yeah,
losing all those kids before they have a chance to come into their full potential, like,
absolutely. I
yeah.
super agree with that. And yeah, there's definitely a different set of rules in versus out in the world. I'll say I love the idea of being an artificer. I think that's really cool.
Ah,
I've
that's the
always
word I was
loved
meaning. I
the
got
idea
that.
of building things
Yeah.
and creating things and crafting things is very cool to me. Um, I think the Walt Disney Imagineer is the coolest
Me
job
too.
possible.
I think it's amazing. I mean, it's
I
amazing.
found out today. I just recently followed them on Instagram. So I think they're really cool, and I love to learn all the little details.
Yeah.
I found out today that there are employed Disney Imagineer librarians. They have a special Disney Imagineer library where the librarians help you like research and not just like what is, because you think Imagineering is all like engineering, which it is, and I think that that's really interesting and really cool, and I sort of wish that I'd gone in for it.
Yeah.
But they also have like historical research and making everything accurate and making like all the details, and I just think that's so cool. I would spend so much money to go to Disney and not ride any of the rides and just walk around with the
In
Imagineers
their
all day, and I could
archives.
point at things and be like, this is what we're doing over here, and this is something that we half built for that, and this is the idea, like, I just think that's the coolest thing. And I know they probably can't for like surprise reasons. I will sign an NDA, Disney. I will do anything that you want me to do. Just let me talk to the
let
engineers.
us go. Yeah, see? And the cool thing about the Imagineers is they have people at all the different levels, so you don't have to be like, what I'm saying is like, I
You
feel
don't
like
have to
I
physically
could
build the
I
components.
think I could come up with an idea, and I could even say to you, like, this is what we need to make it work. We need this magical creature's skull, and we need this thing, and I think I could do, but I don't have the, like, the math to be able to actually put it together.
Yeah.
So I am not like, I was like very musically involved, and there is like not any of that in this school, right?
Maybe
So
there's a component.
I'm like, they need like some singing thing. I could do that.
Maybe a singing thing. Or I'll say you cook a lot. Maybe there's a
Yeah, I
component
did
to like
think
potions that would
spells,
work
right?
really well for you.
Potions, right?
Like
Yeah,
Chloe
maybe.
does, who's the character that comes up later, does potions in such an interesting cooking style way of like she figures it out a little at a time, and this is what's gonna feel right, rather than my
And
husband
she
always
adds
says,
it to stuff that then she's able to use to reinforce like her room and things like that.
She was
I
able
feel
to
like I could
figure out the recipe for that one spell that I don't remember.
Yes.
The one that's monster bait, basically.
Oh, right. But
it,
she
like,
also
takes-
helps them with the one that like calms your nerves down.
Yeah, and she has to like walk through the steps a couple of times.
Because Elle can't. Her mom did it, but Elle can't do anything.
Elle can't do it.
She can't
so
do anything that's like
calm.
gentle or like
You need to be
nurturing.
Like nice,
that's not.
And
Elle.
it does not work for her. But yeah, Chloe helps figure that out, and in a lot the same way. My husband always says there are in D&D there are wizards and sorcerers. And wizards work really hard to like learn and get book knowledge and go very strictly by the rules. And sorcerers just have like an innate knowledge of magic and they figure it out.
Yeah.
And he's like, when it comes to cooking, my husband is a wizard and I'm a sorcerer.
Yeah, that's the same.
And I'm just gonna figure. And he'll be like, "How much do you put in this?" And I'm like, "I don't know, like what it needs.
Yeah,
like until it smells right, like that kind of thing." And he's like, "What is wrong with you?"
Yeah. So my husband, he takes over most of the cooking when I'm coaching. And he's like, and he'll get a recipe and he follows it exactly and it will taste fine. But then it'll be something we like. So then like I'll end up doing it. And he'll be like, everyone will be like, why does this taste different? And I'm like, oh, because like I added seasonings, Like I was just like in the cupboard and I was like, oh, look, we have the herbs de Provence. That'll be good. But like if it's not in the instructions, he's not.
It's not going in. Yeah. And I'll sometimes be like, I'll look at a recipe and be like, I feel like I can skip that part and just do it without it. And then he's like, what is this? I'm like,
you're like, it's a new thing I invented.
He's like, how much of the honey do you add? And I'm like, no, I skipped that. It makes it spicier. And he's like, what? Like, yeah. So maybe that would be a vibe for you. You could find a place.
I feel like that is possible. And I also feel like, to be fair to myself, if this was the culture you grew up in, you would have...
You come in with some skills and knowledge.
Right. So like whatever, you know what I mean? Like...
whatever your
both
mom
my
was great at,
mom
she
and my
taught you.
grandma are amazing cooks. You know what I mean? So like if we like translate that to like I would be coming in with different skills than I have now. But if I got plopped in there, I'm dead. Which is okay, spoilers. If you don't want to hear this, close your ears, even though it happens immediately and doesn't matter at all. But the girl who doesn't know that magic exists but has magic and gets brought into the school is already dead when the story starts. Yeah. She's dead. Because and I think that's so funny because you can't.
They've been in school for 2 years.
Like she doesn't even know. Like
she got eaten by a monster.
Yeah, she's already dead. And actually, she didn't get eaten by it. Well, she did, not kind of, but
ish.
And she only lived as long as she did because Orion was there to save her over and over and over again. And in a normal year, he wouldn't be there. So yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I do think there's that. I'll say I love the idea of artificer track, and I think it's really, really cool, but I worry that I wouldn't commit to it appropriately like in real life. Mm-hmm. So when I went off to college, it turns out like you have to study to do stuff, and the only classes, this is so mean, the only classes I didn't really have to study or do stuff for were classes where I just had to write papers. Mm-hmm. I basically was undeclared until my junior year. And then my junior year, I looked at my transcript and was like, I want to have all A's in anything that requires you to write a paper. And so I was like, I'm an English major now. That's why I have an English degree, because I was like, oh, this is easy. So I worry that I would just be like, well, languages is easy, and now I'm at languages track.
Oh, I mean... Possibly, right? But then once you get out of school, you can you can use that, but you could also, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like a lot of those wizards do other things. Yeah. One of the things
much like people with English degrees, most of us don't just do English.
Right. Well, right. So one of the things that I thought was like the coolest, which is like not important to the story at all, was how like these kids would like graduate with like, I don't know, the science track, was there one of those, whatever track, but then they would go and get their masters and their doctorates or whatever at like, you know, U of M and like, I don't know, Berkeley, like they would go and continue their
worldwide,
education.
This is a very inclusive worldwide school, so a lot of her friends are
they're from all over the world. Yeah.
Going to Oxford, they're going to, you know, I
but they would get these like higher education degrees in medicine. And so they're a medical doctor, and then they would come back and they'd combine the two things in the enclave world. And that kind of thing was like super fascinating to me. So it's like, you know, I mean, if you're language track, those languages are real. You could go you can go anywhere, you can do anything. You know what I mean? I do sort of feel like I would be much more hesitant to have children in this world. Like, I would just be like, it's going to be too much work and they're going to die. Like, let's just not have kids. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
I cannot deal with that.
I'd be really hesitant
absolutely
to have
agree.
kids.
And I'll say, to get back to the plot of this book, we find out, again, spoilers. If you don't want spoilers for the first book, you might
just read it first and then come listen.
Just go read it and then come back. Yeah. Is that Elle was an accident, which is fine. But like we mentioned earlier, there's no birth control magic to safely deal with. Right. And so Elle was conceived in high school by her parents. Their senior year was in utero during graduation. It was so early that I think they weren't quite sure. So she's like her mom's not like 6 months pregnant going out, but
I don't think anyone
very
else
early
knew.
And she's still physically fit and fine, but she was in utero. Technically has already graduated the school. My kid had a theory for a while that she was going to get trapped and not be able to graduate because she'd already been out once.
Ooh. You ever hear those theories? You're like, wow, that's fun. Let me write that down for some fan fiction.
Right. Ooh. But her dad, during the graduation run, which is their escape through the last hall out, which is packed full of monsters. That's what they're
and
all
not on
for.
purpose. I feel like we have to keep it. It's not like they're trained. They're not. It's not like this is murder school. So when you come out, you can be a murder person.
No, it's just
on
like
a dragon. This is not Embers in the Ashes. This is just
it is
accidental.
The exit accidentally got full of monsters.
Yeah.
And they're lucky to keep them in there and not up in the school the whole time.
Right.
And so they all have to power up together and try to, escape in their small groups in the last bit. And her parents, again, were in a group together, and her dad doesn't make it out. Yeah. So he sacrifices himself to save her and her mom, which is absolutely devastating for everyone involved.
Yeah.
But yeah, she wasn't. It's not like her mom chose to have this kid and send it, because I can imagine you get pretty resentful about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
While you're in there for 4 years, not able to talk to your mom.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah. So I felt like I had something I was gonna say about that.
So sorry.
No. Oh, I know what it is. Okay, so if you are a person of our age, do not do the math on how old Elle's mom is. It will make you super depressed.
So sad. So sad.
About your own life. You'll be like, oh no, I'm reading this book about teenagers, and I'm like, ha ha ha, I'm running the gauntlet. And then you're like, oh, I'm older than Elle's mom.
Oh no. Oh yeah. But I mean, that's, a situation with a teen pregnancy.
Right, of course. But like the sometimes I do math and then I get like, see, this is why I don't do math. It's terrible. All it does is make me feel sick.
In negative things. Yeah, that part's a bummer if you were an adult to think like, oh man. But it also really like shows you how much her mom went through at such a young age to do this. So if you imagine Elle is, again, preschool age, when she gets this prophecy from her grandmother that's like, you are going to bring death and destruction to all the enclaves of the world. Elle's mom, Gwendolyn Higgins, is so young to hear that information about her own child when she may be 22, like the college age at best, and then has to figure out like, what am I going to do to protect this kid? How am I going to raise her?
Yeah.
How am I going to raise her at all? But also, how am I going to raise this potential evil sorceress to not be evil and destroy things? And like, I'm just gonna, like, that's your choice, right? When you have a kid, you're like, I have to do everything I have to do to take care of this kid, and everything she has to do includes training her to not be evil, which is so hard. And Ellis talks about, she's not an easy kid. She threw a lot of tantrums. She was not like, happy-go-lucky. Her mom ends up raising her on a commune in Wales, so like way out away from people, which is probably safer for people in general. But a commune in Wales that only loosely believes in magic.
Yeah, they're not magic.
Gwyn is
the
like
other
a
people.
Spiritual person, but they're not magical people. It's not a magical commune, because magical people are afraid of her because they heard that she's going to destroy everything. So yeah, that's like a tough situation for a young woman to start raising a kid, and raising a kid's hard anyway.
It's hard.
Not to mention being a single mom, which neither of us had to do, and thank God. Yeah, that sounds so much harder. And it's already hard.
And I mean, a widow, right? I mean, not really, not technically, but kind
really,
of.
But
I mean, she really did they really loved each other, at least the lore of the book is that these two people
easily imagine that if he'd made it out, they would have gotten married and had a different life.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the life they have. Although, potentially, if he'd gotten out and they'd gotten married and then gone, and the grandmother would have had the same prophecy, so it's hard to say.
Right. Yeah, it's true. So I feel like, okay, if you've been on this journey with us through the first book, Deadly Education, they're in school, they're juniors, and Elle and Orion have to go, and they have to basically help the seniors, because Orion, who has been saving everybody for 3 years, has made it so that there's a lot of hungry monsters and there's more kids than normal. So it's like everything.
And the more kids you have, the more monsters are drawn.
Right.
So that's like part of why you have to send all your teens to the school, because otherwise they're drawn to wherever all your teens are, which is unsafe for everyone.
Right. So it's like there is always this like balance in that they're always like actively fighting against in these books, which I think is super fascinating. It's that like you save one person and there's like, there's a consequence down the road or whatever, or is there? And in the beginning, it's like there's always a consequence. Like stop being such a twat, Orion. Like, but like, I feel like as the stories go on, what we learn is, like, actually, if we could get out of that mindset, if we could stop living that way, then more people get to live, right? More people get to thrive. So at the end of this book, they have to go and they have to fix some machinery or whatever with some other seniors, but then, they're still there. And I just, that to me is like this whole first book is asking these questions. Like, how are the enclaves fair? But can you really blame them? Like, can you blame somebody for wanting to get their kid into a space that would give them infinitely better odds of succeeding? And this is something like my husband and I had been talking about. Last year, there was an apartment fire in our neighborhood, and 2 kids died. Like, one kid jumped out a window, and 2 kids died. I mean, so, right, absolutely tragic. But, like, also, like, everyone knew that it happened because that's so rare. Like, that's so rare in our country and in the Western world to lose a child before their time, that when it happens, it's shocking. And why wouldn't you do whatever you had to do to get your kids to a place that was that safe, right? Like, of course, you would do whatever you had to do to get your kid to a place. And I really felt that reading it this time. I felt that sort of like that desperation, and then that like, what's our responsibility once we're here, once we're in that safe space. And I have no idea if that's what Naomi Novik was going for at all, but that is like what's ringing true in my heart, is like, because once these people are in enclaves, then they're like, nobody else in, this is my, like, we're safe, like, oh, we're so, and I feel like, humans have that, we have a scarcity mindset, we just do. And I think it takes so much work to actively fight against that feeling that there's not enough, how do I protect what I have? And I don't know, there, like, that's kind of struck me. That struck me a lot in the whole series, this read through, in the whole series, that's what struck me. But in the first book too, to see how they're like, there's always a consequence, and what are we trading? But then at the end, that's when it starts to change. Like, as soon as she's already sticking up for this kid, because he would do anything, he's very strong, but he's not super, like,
he doesn't have any self-preservation instincts.
None, right? And so she's sticking up for him, and she's the first person to do that. And then they go and they do this thing, and it's like right around that time when she finally starts to find her own people, right? And they basically find her, because Adia she's the one that goes and finds that quiet person or whatever. I don't know. There's something about the way that all these books are put together and build on each other that I think is really beautiful and really fascinating, and asks a lot of these questions that are really hard questions to talk about.
I do agree. She wants to be in an enclave. That's her beginning starter.
Yeah.
Is that she has been begging her mom for years to take her to an enclave to just be safe. Because when they're in the commune, it's her and her mom versus any monster that comes. Right. There's no one else with magic there.
Right.
And that's scary when you're a kid and don't have much magic yet.
Right.
That's a lot. That's hard. And so she's been begging, please, let's go to an enclave. And her mom has said no.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure if you find that out in the first one. But her goal, in the first one is definitely like, I'm going to wait until senior year when we start to team up. I'm going to show everybody how strong I am. I'm going to dazzle them with these dark sorceress powers. Somebody's going to pick me for their team. I'm going to be the most powerful person on that team because I'm stupid powerful. It's crazy. I've been just kind of holding back to not be weird or make anyone attack me.
Right.
And then when I save my team of enclavers, they'll ask me to join their enclave, and then I can be safe, and I can bring my mom, and she can be safe, and it's going to be great. I'm going to have a safe life. And even if she won't come, I'll be safe, and I'll be safe.
Right.
And it's also devastating to see a teen who has to constantly have that mindset of like, I'll do anything I can to be safe, even if it's never see my mom again.
Right.
Who she loves very much. Right. That's hard.
Right. And you definitely feel for Elle, like she weirdly is like the moral compass throughout this book. Although I feel like there are other characters who are asking really relevant questions to get her off her high horse, which I also think is good. I think it is easy to be like, this is, we should have a utopia, this perfect society, but then to ask these other questions like, well, how do you actually make that work? And
how are we going to maintain that? That's definitely a question for next time.
Yeah.
I could talk about that forever. But yeah, I think having to accept some things about people and learn some things about people. One of the characters that I think shows that in the first book really specifically is Lou. And Lou is one of my favorites. Yeah. She's a sweetheart. At the beginning, she's a little bit Maleficer. Yeah. And you find out that she's been doing a little bit of bad magic just to, like, again, survive.
And
a tiny bit to intimidate, which is part of her survival
But
strategy.
That was right. And it was because her parents told her
parents told her to and kind of made her. And then there is a very magical moment where Elle, surprisingly, does a spell out of selflessness. And there's a another member of kind of her lunch table crew, the people that she's not super tight with, but is close enough to eat with, which is a valuable place in this school, gets injured, and she gets injured so badly that you think, oh, is that the first one or is that the second one?
Well, so actually, I think that Lou gets cleansed when Orion
like
gives her a blast of too much mana, and she like has
pushes it out. With
but it does
spell.
it's a cleansing spell.
I'm thinking of the wrong spell. Yeah. Orion is trying to save Elle. Elle is hurt, and he's trying to save Elle, but he puts too much mana behind it, and so she disperses the healing. And it cleanses Lou.
Yeah.
Which, again, is a selfless thing to do. She could have used that magic for something else. Yeah. But she pushes it out, and she cleanses Lou, and Lou is no longer a Maleficer, and she chooses not to go back.
Yeah.
Which is so awesome to see, and it's so cool, and she's such a sweet person. Yeah. And it's a really interesting, like, character arc, where by the end of it, you're so attached to her as such a sweet, calm, shy, innocent little person, where at the beginning she seemed like very fierce and like not to be messed with.
Right. And Elle's even like, because Elle can always tell who the Maleficers are, and so she's like, you kind of keep like a wide berth from them because you just don't know, right? And then of course you find out like the reasons she's doing it and how she's doing it, and how even though she's doing it, she doesn't want to do it, and she's doing it for other people, and so like that's like in a way like twisted it back around, so that's why she's not like descending as fast as somebody else would be. But like, and then to see these, and of course I always love it when people come together. Like my favorite thing like is when the team's all together, we're together. And so like, and that's, what happens sort of towards the end of this book. And you're talking about Lou and like how fascinating she is. And I actually think, what's her name? It starts with a C, from the New York Enclave. Chloe, thank you. All I could think was like Clara, and I'm like, that's not close. Chloe. So Chloe is from an enclave. She has a very ingrained enclave mindset. Like that is her brain, is like, of course you would do this for me because I'm an enclaver, like hasn't really questioned that. And then things happen that make her question it, like, right? Like she starts to question
that
it.
also happens more in book 2.
But it does happen at the end of book 1, right? Where she says, it's the end of book 1 where she says to Elle, like she says, I don't know what the answers are, but I know I don't want to make it worse, or I don't want to be part of the problem. And I don't remember her saying that it's after the machinery, after the seniors have graduated and everything's like wrapping up, because Elle really wants to like.
The seniors graduate and then the book immediately ends, which is a frustrating point I want to put out. Each of these books ends on a hard cliffhanger, except for obviously the last one in the trilogy. The last one in the trilogy has a great, satisfying ending.
So maybe that does happen in book 2. I just read them right in a row.
Cliffhanger where you were like, I can't believe you just did that. And that's frustrating for me because I don't like when a book ends on a cliffhanger. But I do think this book is worth it, and I think even if you
they're all out.
The first one, you still should.
They're out. So we have a and just go right into the next one. It's fine.
You can grab the second one immediately.
Yeah.
Or you can read it at the library and then immediately purchase the full. Which is why all
see that. Okay, so that's what happened to me, Peggy Sue. I read the first one from the library for book club. Then I bought this one. This one wasn't out yet, so I bought this one. And then I was reading it, and somebody was like, you better buy the third one. You're going to want it. And it came out. Well, it was only out in hardcover because it had just released. But then I didn't even read it right away because, like, something happened to my brain, and I didn't finish, like, and then I did finish them. But, like,
I definitely have a metaphor about you only having a hardcover in the third one, but we'll talk about it later. Before we get off today, I do want to, God, there's so much to talk about, but I do want to say, in A Deadly Education, I feel like one of my favorite flipped tropes is Elle starts getting attention from Orion, not necessarily in a positive way. And in a regular YA, I think it would be like, there's so much romantic tension.
Oh my gosh, he hates me, wants to kill me.
She is constantly like, I do think I need to murder him to prove
he's
that
the worst.
I'm the more powerful.
And then when they become friends and she's so mean to him, and he like...
She's so mean to him all the time, and I deeply love it.
Yeah.
But but develops a very, like, at first he thinks she's evil.
Yeah.
Because she appears to be
everybody
evil sorceress.
Thinks
That's her whole vibe.
And he's not good at knowing real Maleficers, is he?
He starts following her around. He's not good at knowing anybody. That's a big thing about Orion. He does not understand people. But he starts following her around to make sure that she's not hurting anybody. And instead, they develop this very like antagonistic back and forth where she is very willing to be blunt and straightforward with him,
which nobody
like, hey,
has been in his whole life.
Hey, stop
basically.
doing that. Like, you're being an idiot.
Yeah.
And she'll kind of push him around a little bit, and he goes along with it, and then kind of becomes like her friend. And then people start thinking that they're dating. And so it's almost a fake dating trope, except he doesn't realize it's happening. He has no idea people think they're dating. But because he's the most powerful boy in school, she is all of a sudden getting treated differently because she hangs out with him.
And she uses it to her advantage. Because she's like, as soon as he realizes people think we're dating, he's going to be out of here. So she's totally using it to her advantage the whole time.
Which I love. I mean, she's not weird about it, but she's very like, yeah, if you want to walk me to class to make sure I'm safe.
I'm still kind of sore. Can you go with me to the workshop?
Sure. She's never even really like that. She's never even flirty or batting his eyes. She will just say things to him that end up misunderstood by everyone else.
Yeah.
Because that's what they're looking for, which is also a fun thing to think about. Like, there's really no romance there at all. But people think there is.
Yeah.
Until, and this is the biggest spoiler that I'm gonna throw out.
Yeah. So if you haven't read it and you don't want to know, just out.
Fingers closed, like, don't look, don't listen, go ahead and cut. Until, literally in the climax,
it's so good.
They return from their mission with the seniors, and the fire cleansing is going to go off down the hall that cleanses of monsters as much as they can every year. They get caught in it. He thinks they are absolutely going to die to this fire and kisses her.
Yeah.
And she pulls him off her face and says, "You are dating?" The most surprised that anyone has ever been to be kissed. She's furious.
And then she uses her power to protect them.
She knees him in the groin.
Oh, yeah.
And then uses her power to save both of them.
And then, the best too is because when her friends find out, I guess at the beginning of the book too, when her friends find out, and they're like, "How was it?" And she's like, "I don't know. Like, I kicked him in the groin.
I don't know." Love it, love it, love it.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, this is not a romance, and there's barely a romance subplot, and it's mostly fake the whole time. But we do have a policy, because of you,
oh yes,
to discuss. Do you think
this
main character is kissable?
I have been thinking about this a lot
and
leading up to this.
Like, he's a teenager, so this answer is not
kissable
to us as adults.
Yeah, I feel super awkward answering this question. Because he is a teen. And even though, like, when I'm reading the books, I'm definitely one of them, right? Like, I'm in her shoes,
I'm a
totally.
Too, right?
But, like, I feel like he is supposed to be, and he is not to me at all. He's, like, a level 3. I'm like, he isn't. And I'm saying 3 because I've had a couple of other where I'm like, ew, like, I would almost give them negative. Like, I don't like. And he's not like that at all. He's
just kind of nothing.
He's this lovely, right? Like, I don't know, he's lovely, and he's like, you like feel bad, but I only have like puppy dog vibes towards him. I don't have any, so I'm gonna say a 3. Sorry, Orion.
Yeah, it's
sorry, hero of the school.
Brother energy.
Yeah.
Or maybe like twin brother energy because they're the same age, but it's very like, it's not a romantic energy.
No, like, I'm like, sorry. And he genuinely does care for her, obviously. Like, his feelings for her are real, but it's like none of the none of the adult stuff that we're used to. There's no pining.
There's no tingles. It's just
nothing. In book 1, at least. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So that was my favorite thing. My dad told me once that he feels like anytime a woman writes a story, there's always a point where the male love interest does something and she just can't help herself. And I was like, you got to read this book.
Yeah.
This is the best.
What are you doing? Yeah.
That's what I'm about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I also agree. I don't think that he's very kissable, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
And I mean, to be fair, in book 1,
grows and changes.
She describes him in book 1 as like a gangly, awkward-looking teen. In book 2, she's like, oh, all of the seniors have gotten right. So it's like
compares him to Charlton Heston at one point.
Yeah, I know. No, it's cool. Elle can have it right. I think there are other people in the books who are probably more kissable as the series goes on also. Although, like...
We can talk about that when we talk about the next books.
Yeah. So...
But yeah, I think that there's no one particularly kissable. Least of all, Elle is... in book one.
Yeah, but
she's so mean all the time.
But she's
Although
my
I was
favorite.
definitely that girl in high school that would like say mean things to
Yeah.
people. So I relate. I feel bad about that now, obviously.
See, I'm
but
like,
I was just
if
very,
she had
like,
been
blunt
my
about it.
friend, if she was my friend, I would think she was so funny and so great. But if she wasn't my friend, I would be like, she's mean and I'm
She's
kind of
so
scared
mean.
of her.
It's
Because
exactly
I was
what
also
thought.
easily scared. So
Yeah, I just read it as I'm her best friend and we are both complaining about this thing and I love it. The voice is amazing. It's my favorite part.
Yeah.
I could listen to her complain about things all day. And she does have kind of like a longer, some of these chapters are super long.
Yeah. Yes.
There'll be rambling explanations of the magic.
Yeah.
I never got bored
Me
with
either.
it. And there are a lot of books where I do.
Yes.
So I want to say, like, there are some books where it's like, oh, the fantasy info dump is killing me. But these are like, oh, the fantasy info dump is really
I don't know,
getting
and I don't know how she did it. I don't know how she did, because there are pages of like inner, and it is not boring to me. And I got teary-eyed so many times in all of these books, because you just will get a shot of her feelings, and it just hits you. It hits you so hard, even though she's a snarky. You still feel that, you know, or what that would be like, which is what the best books do for us. The best books help us see a new perspective and feel new things, or say, oh my gosh, me too, I didn't know. You know what I mean? Yeah. Well, so thank you for being here with us, and we will hopefully get to the other two books not as long as it might.
Soon.
Yeah, hopefully it won't take us that long. And in the meanwhile, you can just read them. So, and if you have read them, if you have thoughts, talk about that down below.
Absolutely. We would love to know what your questions are, what your comments are, if we're pronouncing words wrong.
Yeah.
Let us know any of that stuff, and we will take that into account. Hopefully, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm not good at remembering new pronunciations right away.
I mean, I'll just appreciate that I know it. That's what I'm going to do. So.
And we might end up recording the next one before we post this, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.